It's that time of year again. Income tax time. That's Bob. He's my accountant. I don't want to have to pay Bob. I don't want to have an accountant, but I do have to because taxes are so complex. I don't know how to fill them out. Most Americans don't. Most people today hire someone else to do their taxes. I just don't know how to do what he does. Mine are probably worse than most because I get income not just from Fox, but from my speeches and my books. So I have to pay Bob, what, several $1,000s a year?
That's nobody's business.
Probably true. But what a waste. Think of what I could do with the money. I could have this delicious steak dinner 200 times a year. I could buy this cool motorcycle.
I could take this cruise ship all the way from New York to Venice and back. Or better yet, I could do some good for the world. The same money I waste on Bob, I could buy 2 Habitat for Humanity homes overseas. Or I could pay 3 kids tuition at this Catholic school.
Bob would lose out, but he could find more productive work. Maybe he could build those charity houses. Anything would be better than so many of us spending thousands of dollars on this stuff. So tonight, let's attack the tax system.
And now, the man who shatters conventional wisdom, John Stossel.
Here it is, in all its ugliness, the U.S. tax code and its explanations. It's more than 3,000 pages. How did we get to this? Taxes were once simple. Government used to run just on taxes on imports, and also things like liquor and tobacco. But then in 1913, the politicians decided we need more of your money, so we got the income tax. Here's the first 1040. It was pretty simple. Just 4 pages with the instructions. Look how little money they took. 1% on incomes between $20,000 and $50,000. Just 1%. Also, anyone making $50,000, that's the equivalent of someone making $1 million today once you adjust for inflation. Those in the top bracket had to pay 6%, but you didn't hit the top bracket until you earned $11 million. But leave the amounts aside for a moment. Look at the change in how complicated the forms are. From those 4 pages, what do we have now? This is the current 1040. If you include the instructions, 176 pages. How did this happen? Well, a new movie out this week tells the story. It's called An Inconvenient Tax.
During World War I, the top tax rate moves from 7% to 77%. And suddenly, taxes become a huge concern of a lot of people. People came to Congress. The first deduction, the first one that was really focused on the tax laws, was the charitable deduction. And that's because presidents of universities and colleges came to Congress and said, look, we're not getting contributions. You're taking 77% of the top dollars of rich people. So Congress said, well, we'll give you a charitable deduction.
And then people said, we need a lower rate for capital gains, and then a deduction for retirement plans, for children, and so on. Still happening, because everyone wants a break, and politicians love giving us gifts.
Give families a $10,000 tax credit for 4 years of college and increase Pell Grants.
And then the politicians applaud themselves for their generosity. And they campaign by making promises to the favored groups.
I'm going to provide a $4,000 tuition tax credit that helps parents be able to afford the price of tuition so we can go to college.
And that wins them more applause.
And the tax credits bring us more pages in here. Can we bring a camera in closer? I mean, look at this fine print. 3,000 pages of stuff filled with these special exemptions. And partly because of all these exemptions, to get the money they wanted, politicians kept raising the basic tax rate. By the 1940s and 50s, the top rate was 90%. That changed, as the movie explains, thanks to JFK.
Kennedy.
For
first president of the modern era to embrace the issue of the income tax was John F. Kennedy.
He was the first president to realize that high tax levels stifle economic growth, and so he proposed
top-to-bottom cut in both corporate and personal income taxes.
His tax advisors came along and said, but these high rates retard economic growth. And that began the real conversation about the relationship between tax rates and economic outcome.
He'd actually gone in and slashed the World War II and Korean War tax rates, the marginal rates across the board. He took the top rate down from 91% to 70%, and the bottom rate down from 20 to 14. And we had several good years of growth after the Kennedy tax cuts.
the hardest thing in the world to understand is the income tax. That's said to be a quote from Albert Einstein, and when he was alive, the forms were much simpler than they are now. These are my taxes for this year. Just think about the time my accountant and I waste preparing this. Think about the time you waste.
How much time? It's hard to measure that exactly because of the extra time we spend bundling receipts and so forth. But consider just the cost. Those of us who pay others to do our taxes spend more on that than the Fortune 500's 5 biggest employers pay all their workers. In other words, what we spend on tax paperwork is greater than the pay of every worker at Walmart, United Parcel Service, and McDonald's, and IBM, and Citigroup. All those places combined.
General Electric recently filed a tax form that droned on for 24,000 pages. What a waste of creative energy and time. And what an awful intrusion when government funded itself on user fees that didn't violate our privacy by demanding to know how much money we made and how many dependents we had. But then we got the income tax. Okay, then it was just four simple pages. No big deal. That's no big threat. Didn't even take much money. Just 1% from millionaires. Now people who make half that pay 50% once you include state taxes. But leave aside for now the amount. The complexity is just as evil. The 1040 form has gone from those 4 pages to these 176 pages, if you include the instructions. 4 million words, almost. After all those congressmen had to give those special deals to their contributors. No ordinary human can understand this. Oh, but don't worry, the IRS is ready to help you.
Its website lists 1,900 publications, forms, and helpful instructions. The operators at the IRS help centers are also waiting to guide you. Sometimes they even answer the phone. The IRS admits that a third of the time they don't.
When they do answer, they don't necessarily give you the right information. The IRS admits their own help centers give wrong answers much of the time. Though I shouldn't blame them. Congress created this. I mean, this is insane. How dare a government that supposedly serves the people impose on us this way? Politicians who create such laws aren't our representatives, they're our rulers. This is a scam. They increase taxes and their complexity, and then they demand we pay them homage. If we do, maybe they'll give us exemptions for little pieces of our lives. Let's call the whole thing off. Scrap today's income tax. Let's scrap it for the system the founders had. That was user fees and tariffs. Okay, it's not going to happen. But how about scrapping the income tax for the fair tax? Or scrap it for a flat income tax with no deductions. A flat tax of just 17% might raise just as much revenue on a one-page form. Wouldn't that be nice? Or at least give us taxpayers a choice. We can fill out the simple tax or the confusing one. I know which one I'd pick. Now, there's always a risk in proposing a replacement for the income tax. We could end up with 2 taxes. Congress might say, a national sales tax will substitute for the income tax, and then later say, oh, sorry, there's not enough money, we need to keep the income tax too. It's a danger. I wouldn't put it past the greedy politicians. But fear of that shouldn't stop us from trying an alternative. Let's not take our eye off the ball. The current system is an assault on our time and our freedom. We should have lower and simple taxes. We've been abused long enough. That's our program for tonight. See you next week.